Hello and welcome to episode number 4 of the Health and Fitness Podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Paul Correale, and thank you very much for listening and joining in. Once again, if you have any questions or comments, please email them to me at coachcorreale@gmail.com. Correale is spelled Correale, and I would love to hear from you, hear any comments you have, any questions you have. If there's any exercise demonstrations that you would like me to video and then share with all of you, I'd love to do that, no problem. If you have a video of yours that you want to share, maybe get a technique analysis, you can also send those to me via email. I have begun uploading the podcast videos and other videos that I have to my YouTube channel at Coach Correale, and you can also see this podcast there after it's been uploaded. So for today, as normal, I'm going to spend the first little bit of time talking about some principles in kinesiology. I want to go back and talk about this idea of the nervous system and its connection with muscles, and then how we can almost tailor exercise and exercise programming and protocols to meet and match that neuromuscular activity to maximize performance. So what we see here is our typical neuromuscular junction. And when not getting into too much detail with nervous system, which is something that's covered within a kinesiology course, even within an upper level biology course, what we see here is a standard sensory neuron. And the sensory neuron is developed in a way, its architecture allows for quick, rapid messages to be sent over this very long axon coming from the dendrites to the axon terminals. Now, when we start talking about muscles and how they are affected by this nervous system connection, we are referring to the pre and the postsynaptic neuron. The presynaptic neuron would be that incoming message that is going to want to interact with the postsynaptic neuron, which would be along the surface of the muscle that we want to contract. What we have here is a gap or a space called a synaptic cleft, and in this gap or space will allow for neurotransmitters, which are chemicals that are going to either inhibit or excite the neural activity to the postsynaptic neuron, in our case, the muscle that we want to activate, stimulate, or twitch. So when we say the neuromuscular junction is where the neuron meets the muscle, they're not really contacting, it's where they're going to interact. Now, in the diagram that you see there in the presynaptic neuron, you can see all these synaptic vesicles, and inside those synaptic vesicles are neurotransmitters. And neurotransmitters, once again, are going to be inhibitory or they'll be excitatory neurotransmitters such as acetylcholine can be released. People who use drugs recreationally, stimulants, depressants, these drugs mimic neurotransmitter activity at this synaptic cleft. So if we wanted to, and we talked about motor units in our last podcast, where we said a motor unit is a motor neuron and all the muscular fibers that it innervates. When we want to have muscular contraction, we have to continue this excitatory message from the pre to the postsynaptic neuron, which is along the surface of the muscle itself. Now, the impulses, this action potential, so to speak, that is created by this message that's traveling along this long neuron, this ends and concludes in this presynaptic neuron. And there's a big influx of calcium that will come in once that message is ending at the terminal, and that calcium will then stimulate the release of these neurotransmitters. And so An example of a neurotransmitter would be ACH, which is our acetylcholine. This is now going to travel to the postsynaptic end. It will interact with channels that are alongside receptors that are alongside that postsynaptic neuron, the muscle, surface of the muscle, and therefore continue that excitatory message to allow hopefully for muscle twitch. Okay, the sarcolemma is that kind of outer surface of the muscle where these receptors are located, which hopefully will receive the acetylcholine. The more receptors that are able to interact with acetylcholine, the more innervation or the more continuation of that muscle twitch, because of another important ion, sodium, will be able now to enter into the postsynaptic neuron. So here's just another diagram that kind of shows this idea of the motor unit, where we have the innervation from spinal cord leading to the different muscle fibers within the muscle belly itself. It is to the benefit of the motor unit to innervate many muscle fibers so that we can have a concentrated, coordinated contraction that exists once the voluntary decision is made to go ahead and contract the muscle itself. And here's just an electron micrograph view of that same thing. Now, when we look at trying to train this neuromuscular junction, a term that's thrown out there a lot is muscle memory. You have muscle memory, and this is not incorrect. It's a function of practice and training. You have, and I'll talk about this term later on, but you've greased the groove of that movement so many times that your nervous system, even though it's a voluntary contraction, it's working so smoothly and effortlessly to perform that contraction or that exercise, whatever it may be. So the more practice that we have in place, the more structured practice, proper practice. Remember, practice makes permanent. So if we are practicing in proper form, or if we're doing something with improper technique, then we're just making that permanent, which is not going to help with this idea of making that neuromuscular junction, that neuromuscular connection, that firing the muscle twitch as efficient as possible. When we use a program and protocol that really focuses on practice, then what we lead to is mastery of the skill. And please remember, I've said this before, I'm a firm believer that strength is a skill and it has to be practiced. Just how, in math, to learn about math and calculus, that is a skill. You have to practice that skill. I think what ends up happening is maybe due to inexperience, and that happens. But I think people get the idea of training and a workout. I think they get that confused. In my sense, a workout is something that you do, you get sweaty. It's, I'm going to pick this exercise, I'm going to do this reps and sets, and I'm just doing a one-off style workout. But if I'm training, that training is part of a protocol that I'm following with specific sets and reps that are leading me towards a larger goal, which could be mastery of a skill. Also, I've said this before, fatigue is not a skill builder, right? So the whole idea of, last rep, best rep is a good frame of mind, but you better have some gas in the tank. The whole idea of, giving it your all and vomiting at the end of a workout and maybe failing on reps. When you fail a rep, what are you practicing? You're practicing to fail. So there's a methodology that some people kind of get misconstrued with that. Hard work is hard work, but you can work smarter, not harder. You can put hard work and effort into a properly planned protocol where you feel like you've left reps in the tank at the end of the workout. Those reps that you've done are practice for the next day, and then you keep building up that volume. And so this brings me This brings me to a concept that I was taught when I did my Strong First certifications in barbell and kettlebell training, based from the teaching of Powell Tsatsouline, is this idea of greasing the groove. And this premise of, if you can do 10 reps, let's say you can do 10 pull-ups, and you want to continue to practice and grease that groove of fitness, do half of that, but do half of that every single day. And so by that means, let's say on a Monday, you want to do your max out 10 pull-ups, and by the time you get to the end, the last one, it's, your form is off, you barely got it. But then the next day you may be sore, you may not be able to perform as well. But if you did say, let's say 4 or 5 reps on Monday, you feel fresh, you're ready to go. Next day, Tuesday, do another 5 reps. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you've accumulated a volume of repetition throughout the week while still leaving reps in the tank, while still using this idea of you're practicing the skill instead of blowing yourself out with, day one, overdoing it, and therefore you're in, DOMS, or delayed onset muscle soreness, for the rest of the week, where you're not even putting any work in. So that's a kind of mindset that has its evolution in this idea of how the neuromuscular junction works and how we can kind of biohack that neuromuscular junction for our benefit. Okay. Now, you may have heard or seen some of these exercise protocols. It's maybe some of these terms that you don't, maybe you don't know the meaning, or you don't know, what they stand for, how are they used. And one part of becoming an exercise enthusiast is putting into practice what you read, what you research, what you see. And I've tried all of these protocols that I'm gonna talk about today. Any exercise or exercise program that I speak of it because I've done it. I would never recommend or prescribe a workout program or protocol to someone if I haven't done it myself, if I haven't tried it. So also, with that being said, if you do follow a program, if you have, you've seen this program on paper and you want to follow it, before you start making changes, just complete the program to the end to say, okay, I've done it, but this is what I would do different. This is where I would modify. Don't go ahead and modify it as you're doing it, because you may not get the benefit as advertised of said program or protocol. Okay. So the first one we see there is Tabata, and this became very popular, I believe, in the earlier 90s. Dr. Tabata came up with this idea of a short, high-intensity exercise followed by a short rest period. And the classical Tabata timing is 20 seconds on, hard work, followed by 10 seconds of rest, and you repeat this for 8 rounds. So as it reads there, if you do the math, that's a 4-minute workout. And some of you may scoff at that and say, well, 4 minutes, what can you get done in 4 minutes? That's not even a workout. Well, you have to, if you do it properly and you try it, the metabolic benefits of doing it are outstanding. This is not something that you should be doing every workout. This is something that maybe a couple times a month, you can work on a Tabata protocol. If it's using the proper exercises, it could give you a lot of benefit. One of the hardest Tabata workouts I've done came from the work of Dan John. This is the front squat Tabata protocol, where you take an Olympic bar. You have to know how to front squat, and if you're front squatting, there's a limitation with shoulder mobility. Some people cannot get their wrists and shoulders into that proper kind of Olympic style catch front rack position where you can squat from. Some people like to do the crossing over of the arms. That's fine. The protocol calls for you taking an Olympic bar, which is 45 pounds, and maybe loading it up to about 65 pounds. I've done it both with weight and without weight, and you get in there and you start your timer and you get 20 seconds of front squats. As soon as the 20 seconds are done, you rack the weight, you have a timer, and I have a Stopwatch Tabata Pro is a free app that I use that you can set up your timing for your rest, for your work intervals. And as soon as that 10 seconds is over, you hit it again. You go for another 20 seconds. Now, knee-jerk reaction is, okay, you're just using the bar. It shouldn't be that bad. But in my experiences, especially when I put 65 pounds on, by the time I got to halfway, about round number 4, it was debilitating. And the dread mentally, and this is where the mental toughness and this whole idea where you can kind of put in that hard work input is, as soon as you rack the weight, you're standing there in your squat rack, and you can see your timer, and it's like 7, 6, 5, and you're, oh my gosh, like the time of rest seems to be going faster and faster before you're done. So that's an interesting, the front squat protocol is a specific one, but you can tailor it to your needs, what you have, your equipment wise. I've tried to do a Tabata workout with kettlebell swings, and I learned very quickly you have to go light, because by the time you get to the 3rd or 4th round out of 8, you're not doing a very, very good quality reps. And something like a front squat or a kettlebell swing or kettlebell snatches, where they're technically demanding, you have to look at the safety aspect of, if your form is suffering, then you must stop. The second one there is an EMOM, or every minute on the minute, and this is one that is also common within the CrossFit realm, and personal trainers love this one. So you set a timer for a minute, you have an exercise or series of exercises, and they're for a specific amount of sets and reps, or a specific amount of reps, and you perform those. And as soon as you're done, whatever time is left on the clock, you rest. When the timer is down to 0, you start the next minute, you start the exercise again. And my experience with this, from Strong First, there is a program, Pavel Tsatsoulin's program, Simple and Sinister, where it is 10 minutes of one-arm kettlebell swings. And when you're performing your swings, you're doing 10 left, 10 right, you rest for the remaining minute, and you start up on the next minute. And it kind of works out to be half work, half rest, about 30 seconds of work, 30 seconds of rest. The EMOM is good for, whatever time you said, let's say 15 minutes, 20 minutes of total work time. This is a good way of giving you enough rest to focus on the skill. People who want to get better, once again, at pull-ups, a good every minute on the minute, maybe say, hey, perform 2 chin-ups, rest for the remaining time. You maybe perform 2 chin-ups and a couple push-ups, rest for the remaining time. So you can play around with the exercise and give yourselves enough rest so that when you start the next round, the next minute, you're at your best for that. And then another one is the Amrap. Okay, and commonly this is, CrossFitters like to use this one too, but this is as many rounds as possible. So you would set a time, 10, 15, 20 minutes. You'd select your exercise or series of exercises, and you would perform as many rounds of that exercise or those exercises within the given time. Now here, you rest as much or as little as you need. There's no defined rest period. The clock is counting down from 15 minutes. You can go as fast or slow as you like to try to get your amount of sets or rounds. The other terminology, you can say as many reps as possible. So you can set a time and get as many reps as you can for a certain modality or exercise that's there. Okay. Also, it's a good metabolic style protocol, the Amrap, to get as many rounds as possible. Once again, with proper safety and form. Here, with these different modalities, you have to check your ego at the door, right? Going lighter, quote unquote, is not a sign of weakness, right? Going lighter within a given exercise, especially one that you have no experience, you don't have a lot of experience in, is so beneficial. So keep that in mind when you're selecting not even these exercise protocols, but even exercise programs. Okay. Now, I have two questions to pose to all of you, and I would like you to kind of get back to me, and you can email me at coachcorreale@hotmail.com. So the first question is, what has been the biggest barrier / challenge to you reaching your fitness goals? Okay, this could be anything. And number two, what new fitness trend, program, or exercise would you like to know more about? And I would like to hear from you, so if you can take a couple minutes, pose an answer to these two questions, email them to me at coachcorreale@gmail.com, and I look forward to reading them, answering them, and helping you out along this fitness journey, because it's not easy, but that's exactly what it is. It's a journey. It's a long process where you can reap the benefits of longevity if you stick with it, if you are doing things properly, and if you obviously you have to be enjoying it as well. Okay, so if you can answer these two questions, I'd love to hear from you, coachcorreale@gmail.com. I always appreciate you listening and viewing. I have a couple videos. I'm going to build that library up. And like I said, if there's a demo that you would like me to make and create and film and record and post it, I would be more than happy to do that for you. So thank you once again for listening, and I look forward to hearing from you.